Michelle Obama just stunned the sports world with a move nobody saw coming. In front of a live audience, she didn't just mention young WNBA players targeting Angel Reese and Catlin, she defended her with fire, clapping back at every critic who's been dragging the WNBA star for months.
You know, these young kids today, what they have to go through, what they have to be able to withstand.
The crowd erupted, social media exploded, and within minutes, clips of Michelle cooking the haters went viral everywhere.
Because social media is such a huge part of their world. I mean, you know, there's the hate, but now the hate is in your room, on your phone, with you all the time.
But here's the real twist. This wasn't just about one comment, and it definitely wasn't just about basketball.
And you can't, for whatever reason, tell these kids to turn it off because they're making their living that way. I mean, they now are expected to stay engaged.
Michelle's defense has now pulled Angel Reese into a much bigger spotlight, one that touches on culture, politics, sponsorships, and even her rivalry with Catlin.
So I think that makes it feel even worse. But as you point out, that's happening in sports across gender.
And the question everyone is asking now is simple. Did Michelle save Angel Reese's reputation, or did she just add fuel to a fire that's about to burn hotter than ever?
It's just harder now to withstand other people's horrible, horrible opinions.
The moment Michelle Obama defended Angel Reese wasn't just another headline, it was the kind of cultural moment that stops people in their tracks. When asked a simple question about women's sports, Michelle didn't stick to the usual polished answer. Instead, she pivoted directly to Angel Reese, a player who has been under more criticism than nearly anyone else in the WNBA. Her words were sharp. Critics had been unfair, harsh, and flat-out wrong about Reese. The audience immediately erupted, and the clip began spreading everywhere. It wasn't just support, it was Michelle Obama putting her foot down, and the timing couldn't have been more explosive. What makes this moment so significant is that Michelle rarely speaks in this kind of tone, especially about a specific athlete. By calling out the treatment Reese has faced, she made the issue bigger than basketball. It wasn't just about one player, but about what Angel Reese symbolizes in sports today. Confidence versus arrogance, style versus professionalism, bias versus fairness. And Michelle's defense flipped the conversation instantly, making it impossible for critics to ignore. The question now was simple. Why did Michelle choose to take this stand, and why now? Angel Reese has always been one of the most polarizing athletes in recent memory. Ever since her college days at LSU, she has been called everything from a game changer to too arrogant for her own good. The spotlight only intensified when she entered the WNBA, where her rivalry with Catlin became one of the league's biggest talking points. To her critics, Reese's trash talk and unapologetic confidence crossed the line. But to her fans, she was exactly what women's basketball needed, someone unafraid to be herself. This is why Michelle Obama stepping in matters so much. She didn't just defend Reese as a player. If you're enjoying this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out. She defended her style, her personality, and her right to compete without being judged unfairly. By standing behind Reese, Michelle tapped into a deeper cultural debate. When does confidence become arrogance? And why does it seem like the answer depends on who the athlete is? That's why her comments hit so hard. They exposed a bias many people didn't want to admit existed. This wasn't the first time Michelle Obama has used her platform to support women athletes facing unfair criticism. During Serena Williams' career, Michelle often spoke out against how the media portrayed Serena's strength and confidence as anger. When Simone Biles stepped away from competition for her mental health, Michelle sent her public words of encouragement, reminding the world that athletes are human beings first. These moments have shaped Michelle's reputation as someone who consistently champions women's sports in times of controversy. Her defense of Angel Reese fits perfectly into this history. Michelle has always emphasized how women, especially women of color, face double standards in sports and beyond. To her, defending Reese wasn't a random comment. It was a continuation of her long-standing fight against unfair narratives. And that's exactly why her words carried so much weight. People knew Michelle wasn't speaking just as a former First Lady. She was speaking as someone who has always fought for fairness, respect, and representation. But Michelle's comments didn't just spark applause. They reignited one of the most heated cultural debates in basketball. Angel Reese has come to represent a new generation of athletes, bold, flashy, outspoken, and unapologetic about the spotlight. Some fans love it, believing this kind of energy brings much-needed attention to the women's game. Others argue it goes too far, calling it cocky, classless, or even disrespectful. Michelle's defense landed right in the middle of this divide, forcing people to take a side. The divide is what makes Reese such a lightning rod. She doesn't fit into the safe, quiet mold that many expect from women's athletes. Instead, she embraces the role of the villain for some and the hero for others. Michelle's words amplified that divide because now it wasn't just fans arguing about Reese. It was one of the most respected voices in America telling everyone they've been too harsh. Suddenly, what was once just a basketball debate had turned into a much bigger cultural conversation. The media wasted no time in running with Michelle's comments. Clips of her speech dominated ESPN and Bleacher Report, while Twitter and TikTok were filled with edits praising her mic drop moment. Some journalists applauded her for backing the next generation of women's athletes, while others questioned whether she had unintentionally fueled the rivalry between Reese and Catlin Clark even further. For a moment, it felt like everyone had something to say. And yet, the bigger story wasn't just about Michelle Obama or even Angel Reese. It was about how women's sports are covered. Too often, controversy gets more attention than performance. Michelle's words forced media outlets to ask whether they were contributing to the double standard. It became clear that her comments weren't just supportive, they were a challenge to the way fans and reporters treat players like Reese. This leads directly into the conversation that has haunted women's sports for years: the double standard. When Catlin Clark trash talks, the headlines call her fiery or competitive, but when Angel Reese does the exact same thing, she's labeled as cocky or out of control. Michelle Obama's defense reignited this exact debate, pointing out how much harsher the treatment of Reese has been compared to others. It wasn't just about perception, it was about fairness. That's why Michelle's comments spread so fast. They struck a nerve because fans have noticed this double standard for a long time. Her defense gave legitimacy to what many already believed but hadn't seen acknowledged at such a high level. It was a turning point because now the issue wasn't just being discussed in sports circles. It was being discussed in living rooms, classrooms, and workplaces across the country. The political and social weight of Michelle's words cannot be understated. She isn't just another celebrity or commentator. She's one of the most trusted and respected figures in America. When Michelle Obama speaks, people listen, and that's exactly what happened here. Her support instantly put pressure on Reese's critics, making it harder for them to dismiss her without sounding unfair. At the same time, Michelle's defense put the WNBA and its partners in an interesting position. It showed just how much the league is being watched, not just by sports fans, but by the broader public. The line between sports, politics, and culture has always been thin, but Michelle's comments erased it completely. Suddenly, Angel Reese wasn't just a player, she was a symbol. For Angel Reese, this moment could be a turning point in her career. Being defended by Michelle Obama is more than just a compliment. It's a stamp of legitimacy. Brands, media outlets, and even the league itself may now look at her differently. Michelle's support could make Reese more marketable, more respected, and more untouchable in the eyes of her fans. But at the same time, this spotlight could also make Reese an even bigger target. The critics who already dislike her will likely double down, seeing Michelle's support as proof that Reese is being protected by powerful voices. And while Reese hasn't fully responded to Michelle's comments yet, her silence leaves fans wondering what she'll say next. That suspense alone keeps her name in headlines. The impact of Michelle Obama's defense also extends far beyond Angel Reese herself. For the WNBA, it's proof that the league's cultural footprint is growing. Big names are paying attention, and moments like this bring more visibility than any commercial campaign could. Rivalries, controversies, and strong personalities are exactly what the WNBA needs to push into the mainstream, and Michelle's words only fueled that fire. But with more attention comes more scrutiny. If the WNBA wants to grow, it has to address the double standards and unfair treatment that players like Reese face. Otherwise, the same controversies that attract fans could also drive others away. Michelle's words were a spotlight, and now the league has no choice but to respond in some way. In the end, Michelle Obama didn't just defend Angel Reese, she redefined the conversation around her. What was once just a debate about arrogance versus confidence has now become a national discussion about fairness, bias, and the future of women's sports. Michelle's sharp words reminded everyone that criticism isn't always fair, and sometimes it says more about the critic than the player. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air. If one of the most respected voices in America has chosen to back Angel Reese, then where does that leave her critics? In this moment, it feels like Michelle didn't just defend Reese, she might have cooked the haters for good. The ripple effects of Michelle Obama's defense are still unfolding. For many fans, her words validated what they've been saying all along, that Angel Reese doesn't deserve to be torn down every time she shows confidence on the court. In fact, some argue that the constant criticism is the very reason Reese has leaned into being unapologetic. The louder the negativity gets, the more determined she becomes to embrace her identity. Michelle recognizing that isn't just support, it's an acknowledgement of resilience. And in sports, resilience is everything. But on the flip side, critics have doubled down since Michelle's remarks. Some commentators suggested that Reese being defended by such a powerful figure only shields her from legitimate criticism. They argue that not all pushback is unfair, that sometimes her behavior really does cross lines of sportsmanship. This tension is exactly why Michelle's words were so controversial. By defending Reese so boldly, she drew a line in the sand, and anyone on the other side felt compelled to push back even harder. That push and pull is part of what makes this moment so unforgettable. There's also the bigger marketing picture to consider. Angel Reese has already been positioned as one of the faces of women's basketball, landing major deals with Reebok and other brands. But those deals only carry weight if the public views her as a positive force. Michelle Obama's defense could be a game changer in this area, reshaping how brands evaluate Reese's image. If Michelle is willing to back her, companies may see that as permission to double down on Reese's star power, even in the face of controversy. At the same time, controversy is a double-edged sword. While it creates headlines and attention, it also creates risk. Some executives may quietly wonder if Reese's polarizing image could alienate parts of the fanbase. This is why Michelle's defense is so strategic. It gives Reese a shield against that risk. If one of the most respected women in the world believes in her, then maybe, just maybe, the narrative shifts from uncontrollable rebel to trailblazer who's misunderstood. Looking at the WNBA as a whole, Michelle's comments also spotlight the league's struggle with growth. For years, the WNBA has been fighting for more viewership, more media coverage, and more respect. Rivalries and bold personalities are often what drive interest in sports, and Angel Reese versus Catlin has been one of the league's biggest storylines. Michelle's intervention only adds fuel to the fire, turning this rivalry into a national conversation that transcends sports. That's free publicity the league could never buy. However, it also means the WNBA is under a microscope like never before. Every decision, every whistle, every media headline, every suspension will now be analyzed with the added lens of bias and double standards. Michelle's words didn't just defend Reese, they challenged the WNBA itself. Is the league prepared to handle that, or will it continue to let controversy drive the conversation rather than actively shaping the narrative? Another layer that can't be ignored is the generational divide in how athletes are perceived. Older fans often prefer athletes who let their play do the talking, avoiding flashy celebrations or trash talk. Younger fans, on the other hand, thrive on personality, social media presence, and boldness. Angel Reese falls squarely into that second category. Michelle Obama's defense aligns with that modern perspective, recognizing that the world of sports is changing and that Reese represents that shift. This is important because women's sports have long been criticized for lacking the entertainment value of men's sports. Angel Reese brings that entertainment. Whether people love her or hate her, they're talking about her. By defending her, Michelle essentially told the world, this is exactly the kind of player who can push the game forward. It's not about making everyone like her, it's about making people care enough to tune in. And in today's sports economy, attention is currency. Michelle's defense also raises questions about legacy. Athletes like Reese are still at the beginning of their careers, but how they're remembered will depend on moments like these. Without defenders in powerful positions, many outspoken athletes risk being remembered only for their controversies. But when someone like Michelle Obama steps in, it reframes their narrative. Instead of being remembered as arrogant, Reese could someday be seen as the player who broke barriers and changed how women's basketball was perceived. History shows this pattern over and over again. Serena Williams was once vilified for her on-court intensity, yet today she's celebrated as one of the greatest athletes of all time. Simone Biles was criticized for prioritizing her mental health, but now she's praised as a pioneer for athlete well-being. Angel Reese may very well be on that same path, and Michelle's words could be the first step in rewriting her long-term legacy. It's also worth noting how rare this kind of defense is from someone like Michelle Obama. Most high-profile figures choose to stay neutral on polarizing sports topics, avoiding the risk of backlash. By stepping into this debate, Michelle signaled that the treatment of Angel Reese wasn't just about basketball, it was about values. Fairness, respect, and opportunity are ideas Michelle has championed for years, and defending Reese was a natural extension of that mission. It showed that even in retirement from the political spotlight, Michelle is still willing to use her voice when it matters most. And make no mistake, her voice matters. Michelle Obama has one of the most trusted public images in America. Her approval ratings have consistently remained high, regardless of political shifts. When she speaks, she doesn't just reach sports fans, she reaches everyday people who might not even follow basketball. That's why her words traveled so quickly and so far. She wasn't just defending an athlete, she was putting a cultural stamp on the debate itself. The conversation around Angel Reese also reflects a broader cultural tension in women's sports. For decades, female athletes have been expected to present themselves a certain way: humble, polished, and grateful. Anyone who broke that mold was seen as too much. But in 2024 and beyond, athletes are rewriting those rules. Social media has made personality just as important as performance, and Reese understands that perfectly. Michelle Obama's defense validated this shift, showing that there's nothing wrong with breaking the old rules. This is why the moment feels so historic. It wasn't just a defense of Angel Reese, it was a defense of the entire new generation of women athletes who refuse to play small. For every young girl watching, Michelle's words sent a clear message. You don't have to shrink yourself to be respected. You can be bold, confident, and unapologetic, and still deserve fairness. That's bigger than basketball. In many ways, Michelle Obama's defense may also influence how other athletes carry themselves moving forward. Seeing someone as powerful as Michelle stand behind Reese could embolden others to speak out more, to embrace their personalities without fear of being torn down. That ripple effect could reshape the culture of women's sports entirely. Instead of athletes worrying about criticism, they may lean even further into their identities, creating a richer, more engaging sports landscape. Of course, this also means the haters won't go away. If anything, they'll get louder. But history shows that backlash often fades with time while progress sticks. Michelle's words might not silence every critic, but they've shifted the balance. Now, every time someone goes after Angel Reese, they're not just disagreeing with a player, they're disagreeing with Michelle Obama. And that's a much harder fight to win. Another critical element to understand here is the media's role in shaping these narratives. The way Michelle Obama's defense was covered says a lot about how women's sports are portrayed overall. Instead of focusing on Reese's game stats or her contributions to her team, headlines centered around her personality and the backlash she generates. That's not an accident. It's the exact kind of controversy-driven framing that media companies know will generate clicks and views. Michelle's words called that out indirectly. By labeling the criticism harsh and unfair, she was exposing how coverage often feeds negativity instead of celebrating talent. This puts pressure not just on fans, but on journalists themselves, forcing them to reconsider how they frame players like Reese in the future. On the bigger stage, Michelle Obama's comments could be remembered as a turning point in the ongoing conversation about equality in sports. Angel Reese may be the center of it now, but she's really just one example of a much larger problem. The fact that it took someone with Michelle's stature to make people step back and rethink the narrative speaks volumes. It shows that athletes alone can't always shift public perception. Sometimes it takes cultural figures outside the game to push the conversation forward. That's why this moment feels so defining. Years from now, when people look back at how women's basketball grew and evolved, they may point to this very defense as the spark that changed how players are viewed, discussed, and respected across the board.